All right, good evening, speculators. Let's do a little what we're watching for the week starting Sunday, October 11th, 2020. Before I get going, just want to remind everybody that this video is for educational purposes, and you can pause it right here. Well, I got to put the disclaimer up, right? Don't I? Where's the disclaimer? I got to put it up there. There we go. You can pause the video right here to learn more about these risk disclosures and disclaimers. Okay, super. All right, so here's what I will be watching, what we'll be watching on the trade desk, for TDG Trade Desk and Futures on Fire for this week. First of all, we're going to have, before I get going, let me tell you a little bit about last week. I wrote here in the Telegram channel. It was a constructive week for our main positions, which are in SPACs, Special Purpose Acquisition Corps, which I'll talk a little bit about tonight. Banks, which I got completely flat, and gold, where it got mostly flat on the pop. So it was a good week for rates, which helped banks. It was a good week for gold, and it was a good week for all of our core holdings. Hold on. Let's get a little more coffee here. All right, so pretty super week, but that's in the past. Let's talk about what we got going for this week. So first thing I want to point out is the stimulus talks are still going to be potential tape bombs, and should move us around a little bit based on the sentiment, any sort of news flow around that. I think the levels that we'll look at in just a moment are a little bit more important, but that's the backdrop because we don't really have much economic news to focus on this week, and not much earnings really to speak of. The earnings sort of get going in the out weeks there. But we do have expiration this week for monthly options for the third Friday of this week, so that will be something to kind of be aware of. Just we might pin some particular levels. Other than that, nothing else really going on in the news here. I'm on CNBC. There is an Apple event that's being held on Tuesday. I'm not sure that's going to be much of a big deal. And then tonight, the futures markets are basically flat with the Nasdaq up a little bit. We had a small gap down. We can look at them over here. There's sort of what the futures look like right now. As you can see, pretty much mixed market to flat. Rates down a little bit, so bonds up, and the big mover there is nat gas. So nat gas is up about 15 cents right now. It got close to 9.50, so we're approaching sort of $3. It has been up or down 6 to 8% on many nat gas days, so it's really moving. That's the one outlier that I would sort of point out there. All right, let's go take a look at some of our levels here. We'll do so on a 4-hour. By the way, if you kind of like the look of this chart, I did a couple YouTube videos which I'll be posting to the Futures on Fire channel about some of the small little updates that TradingView is doing aesthetically that's kind of cool. So you can right click here, go to settings, and you actually now have this gradient. So you can select a 2 gradient. If I were to come in here and actually pick even a darker gradient, you can see what it would do there. See, I don't really want to make it quite that orange, so I'll just go back to white. But there's a gradient setting if you like that. Let me show you one other kind of cool thing that was added. All along, they've had this various layouts. They've added a couple new layouts, and now they also have this sync feature, so sync on all charts. So I really like this. So I'm going to sync my crosshair and my symbol right here. So if I'm looking at this is a 15-minute, then I have a 1-hour, a 4-hour, and a daily. So, and if I switch to Nasdaq, for instance, it switches all the charts. So it's pretty cool. I'm not sure they had that before. I'm pretty sure that sync all charts is a newer feature that's on there. I'm actually doing some tips and tricks, like I said, where I'll do some research to find out if that was there all along. But who really cares? Now I've just shown you how to do it. So we're going to start on the S&P. And I'm going to come over to this 4-hour chart, and we'll talk about a couple levels. Gang, market is respecting technicals quite a bit now. So here on the S&P, what I see is when I look left, clearly after the big fall that we had when we broke that channel, one of the best extreme turn sells we've had in a long time up here, around 35.85s. That big sell-off, small retracement, and then, of course, we know what happened. We had a low down here around 3,200 even back around September, late part of September. Okay, so now we're right back up into what I would say is some potential resistance here, but we do have even more resistance up around 3,500. You can see we're outside the value area on the visible range POC. Speaking of that, I'm going back to about late August, so that's the amount of data we're looking at here on a 4-hour. If you go back to late August, you get a POC of 33.38. You get the resistance right up here at around 3,500, sort of roundish number that I think a lot of folks will be looking at, and that would probably give us a, I don't know if that's 295 on the SPY or exactly where that will be on the SPY. I might be way off. Let's take a quick look at the ETFs here. Not 295. It would be more like 350. Sorry, so 350 on the SPY when we hit about 3,500 on the S&P. That makes a heck of a lot more sense. The 295, 300 is more Nasdaq level. Okay, so let me come back to the S&P here. So we're right into an offer zone, everybody. That's pretty simple. So I will be kind of watching whether we hold kind of 3,500 and what the market looks like for this week around that key level. We're in a pretty big zone here between 3210s and these 3,500. So that's what we'll be watching. And of course, you tune into Futures on Fire TDG Pro Trade Room. We'll go through these levels each day this week and take a look at if there's any substantial breakouts or changes to them. Here on the NASI, we're in this big channel that we stuck in for a while. The visible range POC here is 11,450, and we are also approaching the offer zone. So it was before around 11,006. We moved through that for about 125 points on Friday's action, and now I'm just picking this level that we've originally held for just a moment, and again was support, then became resistance, and let's see what it does on the way back up. Had a good amount of time. Traded from the early part of September all the way through September in this nice channel. It's usually a little easier to buy these double bottoms in this kind of bull market than to try to sell any of the top of the channel. Right now we have broken out of the channel. So the levels I'd be looking for is a zone here. Remember, zones, not lines. That's why I'm all about zones, offer zones, bid zones, not hard lines to say that we should stop at any one particular point. So if we put a little zone in here, it gets us up to about 829. Bottom end of this zone is going to be about 740. We want to keep in mind that our ATR on the Nasdaq is still about 270 points. Okay, so we've moved about 1,000 points from these double bottom lows here, but 1,000 points is really only 3 ATR. Just 3 ATR. Now, of course, it didn't do it all in a straight shot, but that's what we got looking at there. RTY, I didn't draw any levels in here on the RTY. I probably should, but as you can see, we are darn near some very short-term, the highs of this whole cycle, and we're looking about 1690 to 1700 is the offer zone there. Okay, I didn't do as much work on this one by drawing in those levels, so we're going to go back. I want to be back around the same right there. Okay, so see if the 1635 to 1645 ends up holding. If not, it's probably going to form some support for a move up to a test of 1700. All these levels have eventually been tested, so most of these gaps end up generally being filled, especially to the upside. Visible range POC here is 1521. Okay, I wanted to take a look at the ZB right here. 174 13s is where we're trading right now, but if we take a quick look at Telegram, hopefully this will be able to be seen here. I did note here ZB 173.15 is the level. Another day, another bounce. So looking back at my trade journal for this week, although I'm also going through an evaluation, you'll find out more about this. In addition to all my other live trading that I'm doing, in that evaluation, I decided to start to trade the bonds. I was originally just going to trade 2 instruments in there, but these ZBs were just too juicy. So 173.15 is kind of the level there. You can see that very clearly. So now we're talking about a range of around 173 up to 175. Remember, before there was a channel for a while that was 176, 177 with 175 bid zone and a 178 offer zone. But the bonds have been very orderly, and this is a bigger contract. It is a little over $30 a tick, but man, is it giving. And I think it's forming a pretty nice base down here. And as probably many of you know, the longer bond is probably the cleanest sort of inverse relationship that you can get when it holds. Okay. Cleanest when it holds. Right now, it's not all that superly inversely related to the S&P, but what it is at least it's down in a decent amount from 177, 178, given that we're seeing this S&P back up around the 3,500 level. So if all things work out as planned, If there's some resistance in the S&P this week and it has trouble getting through that 3,500, may see some rotation into gold, into these bonds, and see the bonds move back up here to about 176.15 to 177. Up here, this would be the target on any longs, and they would also be the first area that I'm looking to sell. So what I'm watching this week is, do the bonds continue to hold 173.15? And if we get another test of 173.15, that's going to be what I'm watching to load back up on the long side. And speaking of gold, let's take a look at gold. Gold. All right. Held beautifully down here around the 1855s that we know. The visible range POC is up here around 1950. If we tighten up the chart a little bit more, you can see clearly this big round number of 2000 right outside the value area. So you're getting into an area where it could have a little trouble. But as we know, gold can do anything at any time, as most instruments can, but it can be known for its seemingly out of nowhere $50, $60 moves, which would be a little bit more, twice the ATR right now, which is 32. So I'm going to be watching this week about the 1975, 1980 level. I really don't have any pure futures exposure anymore. I just have about 10% of the position left on some of the GLD longs. And that GLD, you can express this a lot of different ways. Of course, you can pick your favorite miner. You can use the junior miners, GDX or GDXJ. I'm just keeping it simple with GLD, and we're going 177, 183s. Those I don't have anything left, I don't think. So now really I'm looking at the 185, 200s for December. So that's the end of year quarterly option contract that we have on there. Okay, PTR TradingView watch list. Oh, okay, 102. So that's it for the levels. Those are kind of what we'll be watching. We went through those there. Now, one thing I wanted to point out. Let's go to Traders Dev Group real quick. I have the capital thing turned on there. Let's turn that off. Okay, go to member login. Come over here to the PTR, and I'm already logged in here. I wanted to point out a little addition that I made to. I wish there's not a way to automatically send out an alert to everyone who's a member of any membership group, which is a bit of a bummer whenever I add new content. I try to figure out how to do that because I add new content to the PTR membership site a lot, and I'm sure most people don't know where to go look for it. So I just wanted to tell you that under the TradingView area, I found this little feature which is pretty cool, which you can actually export and import watch lists. Okay, so one of the things that I have here is I dropped in all of the watch lists that I have here, the futures, popular ETFs, CFDs, which I'll be doing a little bit more on going forward, Forex, and here's kind of some cool watch lists if you weren't aware of them. Top 25 year-to-date percentage S&P, Nasdaq, and Russell. The Russell is one where you're probably not as familiar with these names. I'm not that familiar with these names. So you can just come in here, you go to, again, platforms and brokers, TradingView, download this TXT file, and then here's what you do. You just hit the drop down here, and you just import the list. And it'll import the same watch list name and all of the various names that are on there. Now, what I haven't added, which I will add very soon, is a list that I just started, because this is another thing I'll be watching this week, which are these SPACs. Okay, so I won't go into all these today. You'll hear the acronym SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Corporation, as well as PIPE, which stands for Private Investment Public Equity. And these are pretty extended, all of them. If you look at any of these charts, you can see, well, this one's down a little bit. IPOB, I think, is near the top of its range. Okay, each one of these is targeting some different high-profile companies. The most notable thing that happened was when Nikola was taken public via one of these SPACs. So I have actually just dabbled in almost all of them, but now I'm going to start looking at them a little bit more technically, because I've done some decent amount of fundamental research on what they're taking public, how they're structured. This could all work out swimmingly well in terms of being very clear when you're supposed to get out, which is probably shortly after the conversion to the actual company that they happen to be taking over. But I think it's still early on in this game. It's a sign for me of sort of this mass speculation that's going on right now. And it's still probably early innings of that, honestly. So these are going to be vehicles that I'll be watching and taking a look at. These are all the symbols. And again, if you go into the PTR right over here, I will upload I will upload the text file that you can import, which will be all of these SPACs that I'm watching if you're interested in that. I think that's going to be about it. Again, real quick, still in the core positions as always. So those of you who've been around for a while know that I'm still holding and will be rolling and holding work, looking for an exit somewhere around $50. I've added one called Workhorse, which is interesting. This is another EV play. Technically has a really nice setup here. You can see it's held this 15, 16 level a number of times. This is certainly support. It would be a gift if we got a $10, $15 pullback to load back up here around 16 to 17.50. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. So Work and Workhorse, I'll always be just sort of watching in the background there. And let me see, looking at my notes, I think we covered everything. Stimulus, expiration week, the levels we looked at, PTR, the watch lists, SPACs and pipes, and work. Another little play that I will be watching this week is CGC. I got back into this really small. It used to be a bigger position. And I'm also going to probably mess around with Tilray, TLRY, right? There you go. There's Tilray. Okay. I've just heard this mentioned a little bit too much for me to feel really confident in the play. But essentially, gang, if the election goes as expected, and we'll see, we were very surprised before, but if Biden and Kamala, or if the Democratic ticket prevails, then they've already mentioned, or at least I think the vice president nominee has mentioned, that she would be in favor of making marijuana legal federally. And I can't see how that would be priced in right now. I don't know why it's not a little bit, why these aren't off the mat. So CGC, Canopy Growth, the biggest one. Tilray, of course, probably a little bit more speculative. I'm playing it through Canopy Growth. So what I did on Friday, when I saw this spike, I went and bought some 20 and 25 calls out near the end of the year in December. So that's my play there. But again, it just seems a little too easy. It's pretty telegraphed. So anyhow, well, okay, well, we'll leave it there for tonight. That is going to be our first what we're watching. I'm going to try to keep them under 15 minutes. This one went a little long. For those of you who are TDG Total Access members, we will see you in the trade room tomorrow, and have a great evening. Trade like you mean it. Thanks.